Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm Alyssa Ashe. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate each and every single one of you being here in the chat room and over on Facebook. I'll be shouting you guys out soon. I wanted to say first that during this stream, I will be bringing you guys updates of Hurricane Florence. We're going to be looking at some radar as Hurricane Florence approaches the Carolinas. But first, I wanted to take a second just to let you guys know that our thoughts and prayers are with everyone that lost their lives 17 years ago, the friends and families of those victims, and I ask that you guys will just keep them in your thoughts and prayers as well. Thank you all so much for joining us. Appreciate each and every single one of you. And want to give some shout outs real quick as we get started. Our moderators that have been in the chat room, thank you so much for being here. Looks like Barbara Braley is here. B. Neal, and RSBN moderator. Ella is here, and let me see, Real Frank in Florida, and I don't want to miss anyone, some members as well. DMJC, the Millers are here. Gregory Ashe, my dad, thank you for joining. And want to give some shout outs over on Facebook as well to those watching. Looks like Linda Dormus, Sandy Sattel, Sue Anir, Carol Lytell, Sylvia, Pat, Deborah, Ann, and Gina Podsnick from Fort Worth, Texas. Hey, Gina, hope you guys are all doing well. So first, I'm going to show you from one of our feeds a live look at Hurricane Florence. And you can see as it is approaching the Carolinas in the Atlantic Ocean right now. And this has strengthened to a Category 4 storm. So going to be sharing some facts with you guys about it. And of course, as you know, would love your feedback as well. If you have any information about Hurricane Florence that I may have missed, please send it to me on Twitter at Alyssa RSBN. That would be so appreciated. Or if you're in any of these areas, which I hope you're not, I hope you have evacuated, as along with 1 million other Americans have been ordered to evacuate. But if you still happen to be there and you're seeing heavy rain, let me know. Send me pictures, video on Twitter as well, and I'll share that with everyone at Alyssa RSBN. That would be so appreciated. So, first of all, we're going to go through some information. So some statistics. So Florence is a Category 4 hurricane, packing winds of 130 miles per hour. And this is some information from WGNO ABC. So, some statistics. Hurricane Florence will become the highest north on the East Coast that a Category 4 hurricane has ever made landfall. And the current record actually goes to Hurricane Hazel, which made landfall on the North and South Carolina border in 1954. So Florence would be the strongest storm to make landfall anywhere on the East Coast since 1992 when Hurricane Andrew hit it. Now, the tropical storm force winds extend 280 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, which is far enough to reach from Boston to Philadelphia. So definitely scary, definitely a dangerous storm. And the winds cover an area more than 53,000 square miles, which is larger than the entire state of North Carolina. Now, there are more than 20 million people facing the threat of this storm. So looking at what the Washington Post has to say, and this was updated just a few minutes ago. So expanding in size, violent Hurricane Florence is continuing on a beeline toward the East Coast as an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane. Catastrophic flooding and destructive winds are becoming very likely in the eastern Carolinas. Now know that we are going to do normal coverage tomorrow, but if this does pick up, we'll be bringing you updates throughout the day, and of course all Thursday night as it makes landfall, and into the day Friday morning, Friday afternoon. Be looking for those updates from us as well. So according to the Washington Post, forecasts generally project the storm to make landfall between northern South Carolina and northern Carolina's Outer Banks as a strong Category 3 on Thursday, but now it is a Category 4. Although shifts in the track are possible and storm impacts will expand great distances beyond where landfall occurs. So the National Hurricane Center is warning of a triple threat in the Carolinas and even into Virginia, a life-threatening storm surge at the coast, which is a rise in ocean water over normally dry land, life-threatening freshwater flooding from a prolonged and exceptionally heavy rainfall event from the coast to interior sections, and damaging hurricane-force winds at the coast and some distance inland. So like Hurricane Harvey, which stalled over Texas last year, Florence could linger over the southeast for several days after landfall, unloading 15 to 20 inches of rain in isolated amounts up to 30 inches. So the Hurricane Center said this could produce catastrophic flash flooding. And real quick, looking over to some of your thoughts on YouTube. Yes, Dan Wolf, they have evacuated 1 million people so far. That was ordered for noon in South Carolina. And Ron Entropy says it looks like it's far enough to strengthen into a Cat 5 before landfall. Yes, it does, Ron. Hopefully it won't, but that definitely is a possibility. So back to the Washington Post, the flooding might be similar to or worse than what the Carolinas experienced during Hurricane Matthew in 2016. And this says that more than 1.5 million people have been ordered to evacuate coastal areas ahead of the storm due to both destructive winds and storm surge, which could place normally dry land under at least 10 feet of water. The Hurricane Center said all interests from South Carolina into the Mid-Atlantic region should ensure they have their hurricane plan in place and follow any advice given by local officials. And North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper said at a Tuesday afternoon news conference, even if you've ridden out storms before, this one's different. And he announced the mandatory evacuation of the state's popular and fragile barrier islands. He said it's an extremely dangerous, life-threatening, historic hurricane. Now, even before South Carolina's mandatory evacuation order for coastal areas took effect at noon, cameras showed traffic at a crawl on the main interstate connecting Charleston and Columbia. Now, in North Dakota, Dare County officials warned that ocean overwash already was spilling into low-lying roads and slowing evacuations there. And I'm going to real quick try to find footage of that traffic for you guys. So this is from Nicole Carr. She is a reporter for WSB, and this is, she says, I-20 right before we took the exit for 341 in Bishopville, SC. Hurricane Florence evac orders for 4 coastal counties went into effect at noon. So I'll play that one more time for you guys with the sound. And you can see just how bad traffic was there. Just absolutely backed up bumper to bumper with over 1 million people evacuating. And I hope that you all watching are safe and that your friends and family are as well. If they are on the coast, encourage them to get out, to evacuate, to stay safe, to have that plan prepared, and to just get into an area where they will not be affected by this. So according to the Washington Post, the monstrous storm has already forced the closing of hundreds of schools throughout the region because Florence's rainfall is expected to pound areas far from the coast. The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and Duke and North Carolina State Universities canceled classes through the week's end. And yes, JC, that is true. JC says, I heard they even reversed the other lanes. They did, so it is not possible to get to those coastal areas in North and South Carolina. So Boeing and Volvo actually shut down their Charleston factories, idling thousands who build 787s and sedans. And South Carolina's governor has ordered more than 1 million people living along the state's coast to evacuate the area ahead of Hurricane Florence. So in Virginia, officials said inland flooding was likely to be catastrophic and could test the James River floodwalls in Richmond, the state capital. And the Navy commander of the Mid-Atlantic region authorized an emergency evacuation order for personnel who live in the low-lying area under mandatory evacuation. And corrections officials said they had evacuated a prison in that area. The mayor of the District of Columbia joined Maryland's governor in declaring an emergency in the nation's capital. So Strung Out says, I'm not evacuating, I'm staying, bring it on. Please stay safe, Strung Out, and get out if you can. Also wanted to shout out over on YouTube. We just received a $5 donation from B. Neal. Thank you so much for that, B. Neal. He said prayers for everyone in the path of the storm. Thank you so much, B. Neal. Really appreciate that and your compassion as well. And thank you for serving as a member and a moderator. Really, really appreciate that. I think you're a moderator, or at least, I know you're at least a member. Hold on, I am double checking. I want to get it right. Okay, you are a moderator. Yes. Thank you so much, B. Neal. Really appreciate that. That'll help us get to our next rallies. Now, unfortunately, I'm not sure if you've already seen it. You might have assumed, but the rallies for Missouri and Mississippi this week have been canceled. President Trump did cancel them because of Hurricane Florence so that everyone could stay safe. So really heartbroken that we don't get to go, but definitely understand it. And we are expecting to go to one next week. There's nothing out yet, but stay tuned for that as we find out more information, although there is nothing official out yet. And a little bit of background about Right Side Broadcasting Network, if maybe you're not familiar with us. So we are a conservative news network, but we do our best to be non-balanced, to bring you both sides of the story so that you're really able to make those informed decisions. Now, we bring you broadcasts like this, breaking news, and I do a nightly news recap Monday through Friday. Now, that'll be shaken up a little bit this week because of Hurricane Florence. Of course, hurricane coverage is more important, so we'll be sharing that with you. And Dan Wolf said, me too, Alyssa. I had tickets to the rally. Ugh, that's so hard. I wish you could have come. I wish we would have been able to meet you, but hopefully one in the future. Keep us updated. If you are going to a rally in the future, you know we're going to be there. Let me know on Twitter at Alyssa RSBN. We would love to meet up with you and interview you. That would be so much fun. So anyways, we actually travel to President Trump rallies all around the country. We are on the Trump train, we follow him, and we really pan the crowds. We show you guys the crowds. That's so important to us because it's something that other mainstream media outlets frankly don't do. And we know it's important. We want you guys to see the amount of people there as they are just really putting the steam behind the GOP. We really want to see the GOP keep the House and the Senate this November. And so these rallies are really important as President Trump endorses different candidates all around the country. So we're able to travel to these rallies. As you can imagine, they are very expensive. It's a minimum of $5,000 for us every time, whether we are flying or driving. You know, it's expensive for those rental cars, gas, food, lodging. Now, we do try to get Airbnbs so that it's not as expensive as a hotel. And just to have our live view unit up and running is a few $100s every day that it's on. It's a couple $100s. So like I said, very expensive, and we are supported by your donations. So we're really thankful for each and every one of you that have donated to us in the past or will in the future. Real quick, before we get into more hurricane coverage, going to run down with you guys a few different ways that you can donate. One of them is right here on YouTube. It is the $sign, and I'm looking at the screen right now. So if you are if you're watching on a desktop or a laptop, you should see that $sign in the bottom left corner of the YouTube chat. I believe it's in the right corner if you're watching on your phone, but you can just donate on there and your message will come up in a bright color with your name. It's super fun. You just saw as B. Neal donated, and it's a great way just to, you know, share with us what we mean to you. If you want to type a specific message to one of our other reporters, you can do that over on the YouTube chat. Now, we do get to keep 70% of that on YouTube, whereas on PayPal, we actually get to keep 90% of those donations. And those links are on our website. I'm going to take a second to pull that up. So you just go to rsbnetwork.com. And you can see this red bar up top. The fourth tab over says donate. So you just click on that tab and our different links come up. The first one that comes up if you're donating with PayPal or a credit card. Great way to donate. Like I said, we get to keep about 90% of that, and they just keep 10%. So you enter the amount here, your debit or credit card information, your billing address, and then contact info. And if maybe you feel a little more invested with RSBN, you really like what you're seeing and you want to make sure to see us go to every single presidential rally before those midterms, you can donate through Patreon, which is actually a monthly way to donate. So clicking on that link now so you guys can see Patreon, you can actually become a patron. And there are different levels going all the way from entry level to that all access level if you are giving $500 a month. Wow, and we just received a $20 donation from Abraham Parish. Thank you so much. Who says supporter from Cali. That's so fantastic, Abraham. Thank you. Really, really appreciate you and your donation. That'll definitely help us get to our next rally. And when I was shouting out all those moderators, I forgot to shout out our website moderators. Thank you so much to Common Sense, Glenn O, and Rakulp for everything you do for us and for keeping our website friendly and clean. So real quick, last way to donate is by sending in a check. If you're not comfortable donating online, we completely understand and respect that. And all you have to do is write out a check to RSBN and send it to our P.O. Box here in Auburn, and that is 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344 in Auburn, Alabama 36830. So really thankful to everyone that's donated that way before too. It's a really fun way to donate, and it's an honor. A couple times a month I actually get to go through that mail with Joe and just see your handwritten letters, really see what we mean to you and how we can improve. Love hearing your feedback as well. So thank you everyone that has donated that way. And going to switch it back over to Hurricane Florence coverage. So a little bit more information from the Washington Post, and then I'll actually be sharing with you, if you haven't seen it yet, what President Trump said about this. So speaking of President Trump, he's approved emergency disaster declarations for the Carolinas and Virginia, which frees up funds for relief and recovery. And after a briefing with FEMA Administrator William Brock Long and Homeland Security Secretary Kristen Nelson, he said, "We're as ready as anybody has ever been." And he's also canceled those rallies in Missouri and Mississippi. Now, Shield Maiden, I see your comment. Was the rally the only time that Maggie was with RSBN, or did she come back to RSBN? She is planning to go to more rallies in the future, so stay tuned and you'll be able to see her there. So Brock Long, who's actually a North Carolina native and administrator of FEMA, tweeted out, "Florence could be the most dangerous storm in the history of the Carolinas." Now, as of 2 p.m., Florence's top winds remained at 130 miles per hour, but was getting better organized and increasing in size. This is according to the Hurricane Center. So it was tracking west-northwest at 17 miles per hour and about 845 miles southeast of Cape Fear, North Carolina. So the Hurricane Center is calling the storm extremely dangerous and predicts its maximum winds could still reach 150 miles per hour at peak intensity, which is just 7 miles per hour from a Category 5. So some modest weakening may occur just before landfall, but Florence is predicted to come ashore as a strong Cat 3 with 120 miles per hour sustained winds, although now it is a Category 4. So hurricane watches are in effect from Edisto Beach, South Carolina, northward to the North Carolina-Virginia border, including the cities of Charleston and Wilmington, and extending some distance inland. So the storm's zone of hurricane force winds is expanding and extends 60 miles from the center, while tropical storm force winds extend 170 miles outward. So in coastal areas of the southeast and mid-Atlantic, heavy surf and elevated water levels are expected to arrive by Wednesday morning, and rainfall could begin by late Wednesday night and Thursday morning. Tropical storm force winds could reach the coastland as early as late Wednesday night or Thursday morning, at which point all outdoor preparations should be completed. So extremely dangerous hurricane force winds could batter coastal locations Thursday into Friday. Hurricane to tropical storm force winds could extend well inland depending on the storm's track. So some different storm hazards. One is storm surge. So So like a bulldozer, the storm's winds and forward motion will push a tremendous amount of water onshore when it makes landfall. The storm surge or rise in water above normally dry land at the coast could reach up to more than a story high or 12 feet if the maximum surge coincides at high tide. So Jeff Masters, who is the meteorologist who pens Weather Underground's Category 6 blog, reported a maximum surge of 15 to 20 feet is possible, which could rival heights from Hurricanes Hugo in 1989 and Hazel in 1954. So the biggest surge should occur just to the north of where the eye of the storm comes ashore, which the Hurricane Center projects into southeast North Carolina. And the surge will result in an inundation of roads, homes, and businesses. So the Hurricane Center projects the following surge heights above normally dry land if the maximum surge coincides with high tide. So from Edisto Beach to Murrells Inlet, 2 to 4 feet. From Murrells Inlet to Cape Fear, 4 to 6 feet. From Cape Fear to Cape Lookout, including the Neuse and Pamlico River, 6 to 12 feet. And from Cape Lookout to Ocracoke Inlet, 5 to 8 feet, and from Ocracoke Inlet to North Carolina / the Virginia border, 3 to 5 feet. So models have come into agreement that a northward turn before reaching the United States is unlikely, and that a building high pressure zone north of the storm will cause it to slow or stall once it reaches the coast shortly thereafter. So where exactly the zone of heaviest rain will be is a big uncertainty, and it could reasonably occur anywhere between the mountains and the coast. So if the storm stalls, some areas could see feet of rain, especially if downpours focus over the higher terrain in western North Carolina and southwestern and central Virginia. So, however, some of the latest forecast models suggest the heaviest rainfall could focus on the eastern Carolinas. So now if the storm shifts into Virginia, this region will be particularly susceptible to flooding because of far above normal rainfall in the region since May. In addition, because the ground is likely to be saturated, trees will be vulnerable in strong winds. Now, parts of the mid-Atlantic, especially from Virginia to Pennsylvania, have received 150 to 300% of their normal rainfall since May. So also going to be seeing a lot of wind. The strongest winds will occur where and when the storm makes landfall in a ring around the calm eye of the storm known as the eye wall. Now, if this storm makes landfall as a Category 4, these winds will be destructive, sustained up to 130 miles per hour or so with higher gusts. And the zone where these intense winds occur will be narrow, but effects will probably be devastating. Similar to a strong tornado, the Hurricane Center describes the types of damage associated with Category 4 winds. Well-built framed homes can sustain severe damage with loss of most of the roof structure and or some exterior walls. Most trees will be snapped or uprooted and power poles downed. Fallen trees and power poles will isolate residential areas. Power outages will last weeks to possibly months. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks or months. So outside of this zone of destructive winds, damaging winds are still likely, even some distance inland from the coast, which will lead to minor structural damage, downed trees, and widespread power outages. So if the storm stalls in the eastern Carolinas or just after the storm makes landfall, these wind impacts will be magnified. And some latest path projections. So where the storm makes landfall has implications for where the strongest winds and biggest rise in water at the coast occurs. But strong winds and extreme rainfall could occur at great distances from the landfall location. So keeping this in mind, the likelihood of landfall at different locations based on the evaluation of model data, so 80% in the Carolinas, 10% offshore, 5% between northern Florida and Georgia, and 5% north of the Carolinas. So even in the unlikely event that the storm center remains just offshore, it will almost certainly come close enough to bring dangerous wind and flooding to coastal areas. Now, areas farther to the north and west may be somewhat spared in this scenario. Also wanted to shout out real quick, we just received a $10 donation from Lynn Jean. Thank you so much, Lynn Jean, who says, thanks Alyssa and RSBN. Well, thank you very much, Lynn, for supporting us. Really appreciate you. So some more information from the Washington Post, and then we'll move on to President Trump's statement, and then we will move on to some tweets you guys sent me. Thank you so much for those. Really appreciate your feedback. So while the storm is expected to unleash its worst effects on the Carolinas and Virginia, residents farther north in coastal and inland areas in the Delmarva Peninsula, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York should also monitor the storm and prepare in case the forecast shifts to the north and east after landfall. So Florence's place in history. If Florence makes landfall as a Category 4 in North Carolina, it would be the strongest storm to come ashore that far north on record. And if a major hurricane, which is Category 3 or higher, does make landfall along the southeast coast, the rarity of such an event is relevant. So since 1851, only 10 major hurricanes have done so, and the most recent was Fran in 1996, 22 years ago. Hurricane Hugo in 1989 was the one before that, and it was a Category 4 at landfall, and no hurricane has made landfall as a Category 5 in this region on record. So many people in the southeast and mid-Atlantic probably have not experienced a storm of the potential magnitude of Florence. So going to switch over now and show you a piece of President Trump's statement, and he did tweet this out. He said, the safety of the American people is my absolute highest priority. Heed the directions of your state and local officials. Please be prepared, be careful, and be safe. Ready.gov.
I've received a briefing from Secretary Nielsen, Administrator Long, and my senior staff regarding Hurricane Florence and other tropical systems that will soon impact the United States and its territories. The safety of American people is my absolute highest priority. We are sparing no expense. We are totally prepared. We're ready. We're as ready as anybody's ever been. And it looks to me, and it looks to a lot of very talented people that do this for a living, like this is going to be a storm that's going to be a very large one, far larger than we've seen in perhaps decades. Things can change, but we doubt they will at this stage. It's a pretty late stage. We doubt they're going to be veering very far off course. The places that are in the way and in the most jeopardy would be Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, that area. And again, they haven't seen anything like what's coming at us in 25, 30 years, maybe ever.
So hopefully you could hear that. I apologize if it was a little bit low. He was saying we are more prepared than ever, and just how important the safety to the American people is to him. So really glad that he put out that statement today. Now, I got a couple articles from you guys. One is actually a tweet from Tom O'Neill, one of our fabulous reporters with a huge knowledge on all things in the political sphere. So thank you very much, Tom. And I'm going to pull it over and show you guys. It is from Breaking Now, or Breaking News Now. And it's the path of Hurricane Florence according to windy forecasts. So I'm going to give you guys a live look at that. Thank you, Tom, for sharing it. So we're going to start over. So this is the projected path of Hurricane Florence moving in from the Atlantic Ocean. And making contact with the coast of North and South Carolina. And this is from Windy Forecast as well. It says, pass it on. Here, I'll pull it up so you can see it a little better. Pass it on the eye. Hold on. Just lost it. The eye of Hurricane Florence. Thursday the 13th at 2 p.m. AST. So a projection to Thursday. Wind gusts up to 142 miles per hour as forecasted by the Euro model. So this is a projection, also a view of Hurricane Florence as seen from space. And this was yesterday morning. Another view. And they retweeted Dylan Dreyer, who said cloud tops bursting through the outer bands of Hurricane Florence. I was on board one of NOAA's Hurricane Hunter missions yesterday. See you soon on the Today Show with why these missions are crucial to forecasting these hurricanes. And this is 5 hours ago. Eric Halthas tweeted, with its new larger eye, Hurricane Florence now looks to be making another run at Category 5. The latest satellite frames are frightening. So going to let you take a look at that real quick while I get the next thing ready. So also one of our great viewers, Rick Bulow, thank you so much, sent me a couple articles. So a really interesting one from the Weather Channel. And while I read this to you, I will put that radar back up so that you are able to take a live look at it. So this is actually from the Weather Channel, how the moon could increase Florence's storm surge damage. So at a glance, before we really get into the meat of it, so if Florence makes landfall along the U.S. East Coast, its timing will be critical. A storm surge arriving at high tide will reach farther inland, and the phase of the moon at Florence's closest approach corresponds to an increased risk of storm surge damage. So if Florence makes landfall as a major hurricane along the U.S. East Coast, the storm will drive a large and damaging storm surge inland. But wind-driven storm surge is only part of the coastal flood threat from a hurricane. The timing of the storm's arrival with respect to the high tide cycle is also critical, since a storm surge arriving at the same time of high tide will be able to penetrate much farther inland than one arriving at low tide. For example, the tidal range between low tide and high tide at Charleston, South Carolina is up to 7 feet. So the combined inundation of the storm surge plus the tide above the normal high mark is called the storm tide, and the National Hurricane Center in their storm surge advisories refers to this as the height of the water gets above ground level. So it is too early to tell when Florence's storm surge might arrive with respect to high tide or low tide. However, we can look at the monthly tidal cycle and see that Florence's likely landfall date as of September 13th corresponds to an increased risk of storm surge damage due to the phase of the moon. So real quick, I'm going to give you a look at that tidal cycle. So it's this chart right here. I'm going to zoom in for you real quick. So you can see how high tide is corresponding to that full moon. So each month, the Earth actually experiences 2 periods that have higher tides than normal due to the phase of the moon, and the highest tides occur during the new moon or full moon, since the pull of the moon aligns with the pull of the sun at those times to make oceans bulge out farther. So the new moon in September occurs on Sunday, September, and the highest tides of the month will occur within a day of that date. So the tides will gradually decrease in height, reaching a minimum on September 18th, then increasing again until the full moon occurs on September 24th. So the new moon in September occurs on Sunday, September 9th, and the highest tides of the month will occur within a day of that date. So the tides will gradually decrease in height, reaching a minimum on September 18th and then increasing again until the full moon occurs on September 24th. So Florence's landfall this far would have been a worst case scenario if the storm had hit during the peak of the monthly tidal cycle, which fortunately isn't going to happen. Unfortunately, the tides on September 13th are still among the highest tides of the month, since they occur only 4 days after the new moon. Now, fortunately, Florence will not be hitting during the very highest tides of the year, the king tides, which are the spring tides in late fall through early winter in the northern hemisphere, when Earth is as close to the sun as it gets for the year. So for Charleston, South Carolina, considering just the higher of the 2 high tides that occur Each day, the highest tide of the month will occur on Sunday, September 9th at 1.12 feet above high tide. So the high tide, September 13th, when Florence is expected to make landfall, will be 0.51 feet above MHHW, making it the 9th highest tide of the month. So we will have a storm tide about 0.6 feet lower than we would have had if Florence had hit on September 9th, but 0.7 feet higher than the hurricane had hit during the lowest tides of the month on September 18th. And this situation is similar along much of the U.S. East Coast, though the tidal range can be smaller or larger than Charleston's. And going to switch over to another article. So Rick Bulow, another viewer, sent this as well. Thank you so much, Rick. And this is from the Weather Channel 2. So ahead of Hurricane Florence, South Carolina begins mass evacuation of nearly 1 million along the coast. So one day after Governor Henry McMaster ordered evacuations for all South Carolina residents and visitors along the coast, attempting to clear the state's entire 187-mile coastline ahead of Hurricane Florence's arrival, authorities turned two of the state's busiest highways into one-way streets so that everyone could leave the area. So authorities actually reversed all eastbound lanes of Interstate 26 into Charleston and US 501 into Myrtle Beach, sending all traffic in one direction away from the coast. Now by Tuesday morning, the interstates had been cleared and were ready for the mass evacuations to begin. So Tuesday morning, McMaster announced mandatory evacuations were lifted for most of the three coastal counties, Jasper, Beaufort, and Colton, but still urged some islands and low-lying areas to evacuate. Now, the orders to flee affect nearly 1 million people along the coast. And on Tuesday, McMaster told reporters, "This is a very dangerous storm, and you must take it seriously. We are in a very deadly and important game of chess with Hurricane Florence." So meanwhile, residents continued to pack stores in hopes of grabbing emergency supplies, either for the trip westward or to ride out the storm, a decision that's highly discouraged by officials. So George Grantham told the Charleston Post and Courier he was stocking his cart with hurricane supplies at Walmart just in case. Now, the Sullivan's Island resident had water, radios, snack bars, raisins, and chips. And he told the newspaper, "I have a family of 5 with 3 kids. I'm not planning to go anywhere. If it starts looking worse, we will head out of town." And propane batteries and generators were also popular items. And a shipment of generators arrived at a Lowe's home improvement store in Mount Pleasant on Monday after the store ran out on Sunday. So real quick, going to show you guys a couple pictures. This is from Vault 76 Overseer. Just of empty shelves. Now this is at the Goose Creek Walmart Marketplace. She says Goose Creek Walmart Marketplace is out of water, but overheard from an employee they should be getting more within a few hours. Low on some canned foods, but plenty of supplies still available. And it looks like Shield Maiden said, Alyssa, can you give a moment of silence for the fallen of 9/11? Yes, that is a fantastic idea, Shield Maiden. So going to take a second. I'm going to put the hurricane radar back up so you can see it. But going to take a second and give a moment of silence for the fallen. So if you guys want to take a second and just think about them, pray about them, that would be really appreciated. So thank you very much, Shield Maiden, for suggesting that. Really appreciate that. And all your prayers, I know, were definitely heard. So thank you guys so much. So kind of moving on, just showed you guys from this Weather Channel article, the Goose Creek Walmart Marketplace out of water, but still lots of other things available. So public schools in 26 counties, including as far inland as Lexington, in the middle of the state, will be closed starting Tuesday, according to Governor McMaster. And that will allow state officials to use school buses to help with the evacuations. And the closed schools should be used as emergency shelters if needed. And state government offices in those counties will also be closed. So several colleges and universities in the state canceled classes beginning on Tuesday, including the College of Charleston, University of South Carolina, and Coastal Carolina University. And Coastal Carolina also said it was moving its football game against Campbell University from Saturday to Wednesday at 2 p.m., and it will be played in Buies Creek, Buies, I don't know if I'm saying that right, North Carolina, where Campbell University is located, instead of Conway, South Carolina. So the University of South Carolina had not made a decision on Saturday's home game against Marshall University, the state reported, and high schools near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina announced their Friday night football games would be canceled, according to The Sun. And President Trump approved a disaster declaration request from McMaster Monday night. So also some great images that I'm going to share with you all. So these are from today. This is actually Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, and you can see people just wading through some light flooding on the streets. Now, as you know, more than 1 million people were under evacuation orders in the eastern United States Tuesday, where powerful Hurricane Florence is threatening catastrophic damage to a region popular with vacationers and home to critical government institutions. So we're going to go through. I'm going to show you guys some more of these images. This is more flooding outside buildings in Old Town, Alexandria, Virginia today. And you can see right here, sandbags are sitting in some doorways as water floods outside buildings in Old Town, Alexandria, Virginia. Now, this is some of the traffic. Cars are just bumper to bumper. Vehicles are lined up along State Route 17 as people evacuate the coast of North Carolina in Hampstead, North Carolina, before the arrival of Hurricane Florence. Here's just another close-up of that traffic. And you can see a guy right here. This says a man walks as water floods outside buildings in Old Town, Alexandria, Virginia on September 11th, 2018. And another image, this is also State Route 17. In this, I may have showed it to you earlier, sorry if I already did, but this is a satellite view of Hurricane Florence, and this picture is from NASA. It was taken from the International Space Station yesterday. And this is in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. So Derek Mundy over on the left and Chris Kraus on the right, they're boarding up the Confederate House in preparation for Hurricane Florence in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. And you can see the lane reversal. This is Interstate 26 in North Charleston, South Carolina. And it is flowing westbound toward Columbia. So both sides going west. And this says police cars block the Ashley Phosphate exit ramp off Interstate 26 in North Charleston, SC, as both sides of the highway flow westbound toward Columbia, SC. Also, let's see a few more images. So these are some employees of Redix. They're boarding up the front windows of their store in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. And you can see some people are still actually surfing in Wrightsville Beach. Now this is Preston Gewer. He's carrying a sheet of plywood as he prepares to board up a Wells Fargo bank in preparation for Hurricane Florence in downtown Charleston. And this is Shanae Thurston. It says Shanae Thurston carries her baby as her family cuts short their vacation and evacuates the South Bay Inn and Suites Hotel ahead of the arrival of Hurricane Florence on September 11th, 2018 in Myrtle Beach, SC, Florence is expected to make landfall by late Thursday to near Category 5 strength along the Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina coastline. So this is Jim Carter and Rob Quinn. Now they're boarding up Laggerhead's Tavern in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, as they prepare for Hurricane Florence. This is an employee of the Wrightsville Beach parking office collecting the electronic parts of the parking meters on North Lumina Avenue. So removing those meters in anticipation of Hurricane Florence's high storm surge. And more than 1 million people were under evacuation orders in the eastern United States Tuesday, where powerful Hurricane Florence, as you know, threatened catastrophic damage to a region popular with vacationers and home to critical government institutions. So this is Mary Birdwood, an employee of the Wrightsville Beach parking office, who's actually removing the electronic parts of the parking meters. And this is Randall, also known as Cat Daddy Sullivan. So he and some employees from Parks and Recreation are moving heavy equipment and items from Newsway Nature Park in Kinston, North Carolina. He said anything that can float or get trapped under the bridge has got to go. And some people still on the beach, Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. And you can see some more preparations. Home Depot employee Ken Murphy helps Joe Spielman load plywood ahead of the arrival of Hurricane Florence. So Jazz Undy, the owner of Wrightsville Beach Art Company, is waving to a friend as he helps board up his shop in anticipation of Hurricane Florence. And another man, he's boarding up Aussie Island Surf Shop on September 11th. So you can see just how empty it is. This says Wrightsville Beach in North Carolina is seen September 11, 2018. Before the arrival of Hurricane Florence, more than 1 million people were under evacuation orders in the eastern United States Tuesday. And more people boarding up their businesses just to make sure they will stay safe and intact. And this is Daniel Elkins on the left of Marine Max, lifting a boat out of the water just to keep it safe. And we're going to take a break from the pictures. Also, I wanted to see what people are tweeting about regarding Hurricane Florence. So I'm going to take some time on Twitter. So this is the projected path. You can see where it is now and where it is expected to go as a Category 4 hurricane. And this is from Trey Bell, tweeted out just 47 seconds ago. He says, here is the latest National Hurricane Center advisory for Hurricane Florence. Florence is still extremely dangerous and expected to make landfall midday Friday in North Carolina as a Cat 3. A state of emergency is in effect for many coastal states. And this is from Rochelle Metzger. She says South Carolina opens 12 emergency centers ahead of Hurricane Florence. So here is another map. This is from Bert Steingraber. And he said Hurricane Florence is a dangerous Category 4 hurricane and will bring an extreme risk to lives and property to Virginia and the Carolinas later this week and into the weekend. And you can see color-coded here, risk to lives and properties. Yellow is some, yellow-orange is moderate, bright orange is high, and red-orange as extreme. And lots of people sharing different hurricane kits, preparations, different ways to stay safe. Here's another one, 20 items you need for an emergency kit before a hurricane. And going to bring back up that live radar for you guys. I know many of you are saying you want to see something live. Well, here is that radar, and I have some more information for you guys. So some information from Fox News. Hurricane Florence charges toward East Coast as monster storm, lawmaker says. So as Hurricane Florence, a Category 4 storm, drove toward the East Coast on Tuesday, lawmakers from 3 states in the monster storm's path have ordered mass evacuations for more than 1 million people. So the governor of North Carolina, whose state alongside South Carolina and Virginia is forecast to see life-threatening storm surge and damaging winds from the storm, warned residents of the potential extreme conditions. In North Carolina, Governor Roy Cooper said this storm is a monster. It's big and it's vicious. It's an extremely dangerous, life-threatening, historic hurricane. He said the waves and the wind this storm may bring is nothing like you've ever seen. Even if you've ridden out storms before, this one is different. Don't bet your life on riding out a monster. And President Trump today was given an update on Florence by the head of FEMA and vowed that the government was prepared to respond to the impending hurricane, adding that the public safety was his absolute highest priority. So FEMA Administrator Brock Long warned that the hurricane will be a devastating event and urged people to evacuate if they've been asked to leave their homes. He said electric power could be out for weeks. And President Trump has declared states of emergency for the Carolinas as well as Virginia and canceled campaign events, as you know, Thursday and Friday in anticipation of the storm. So Florence intensified to a Category 4 storm on Monday, and the storm, currently situated approximately 360 miles south-southwest of Bermuda, is moving west-northwest at 17 miles per hour with maximum sustained winds of 140 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center in their 5 p.m. update yesterday. So Florence is forecast to near the Carolinas as early as Thursday and could be an extremely dangerous major hurricane. And yes, swoosh for Trump. If you're just now hearing that, there will be no rally Thursday or Friday. Unfortunately, we were really excited to travel to those and bring you guys that coverage, but they have been canceled by the campaign. So the National Hurricane Update said Florence is expected to slow down considerably by late Thursday into Friday. On the forecast track, the center of Florence will move over the southwestern Atlantic Ocean between Bermuda and the Bahamas through Wednesday and approach the coast of North Carolina or South Carolina in the hurricane warning area Thursday and Friday. They also said further strengthening into the forecast tonight and Wednesday, while some weakening is expected on Thursday. Florence is forecast to be an extremely dangerous major hurricane through landfall. So in addition to a possible storm surge, Florence could dump more than a foot of rain over the course of its duration, which could cause catastrophic flash flooding and significant river flooding. So a storm surge and hurricane warning was in effect for the South Santee River, South Carolina to Duck, North Carolina, as well as the Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds in North Carolina, according to the National Hurricane Center. So additionally, Edisto Beach to South Santee River in South Carolina and areas north of Duck, North Carolina through the state's border with Virginia were under a storm surge and hurricane watch, according to the agency. So officials in states in the storm's path have recommended having emergency contact numbers handy for those affected that need assistance. So if you are on the coast of North or South Carolina, even Virginia, definitely advise that you evacuate, that you get to a safer area. Now that is going to wrap it up for now. I am going to take some time and prepare for my nightly news recap tonight, but stay tuned. Throughout the week, we will be bringing you guys live coverage of Hurricane Florence and what is going on. So thank you all so much for tuning in, for your interaction, your comments, your Twitter messages, the articles. Really appreciate all of it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, for my nightly news recap. Now, once again, for Right Side Broadcasting Network, I'm Alyssa Ashe. Thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon.